Happy Sunday and welcome back to the UpSet podcast. Happy that you tuned in this Sunday evening. And when I say we're, I'm talking about none other than this awesome bunch here. What's up, guys?
Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Yay. It's good to see everybody. Everyone had a good week?
So far, so good. Marlene.
Keep my mental health.
Mental health. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Mental Health Awareness Month. May's filled with a lot of activity. Maybe that's why Mental Health Month is in May. It's to keep everybody sane during everything that's going on. But what's sticking out for you guys in the news? Anything kind of grabbing your attention this week?
Well, I mentioned this story, I think a show or two back, concerning the Paul Mackenzie, who's self-made pastor in Kenya, who led many people to their death as a cult. This took place in the Shakahola forest in Kenya. And he led hundreds, and they're still finding bodies, to their death. He preached, actually, believe it or not, he did preach from Revelation, that these are end times and that we need to prepare to go see Jesus. And the way to do that is to starve yourself.
Wow. Wow.
And he encouraged the children would go first. So they told the families, do not feed your children so that they will starve first, and then the parents, and that will allow you to see Jesus.
Wow.
Many hundreds of people in Kenya followed this guy.
Did he die?
No, he was arrested for the third time. He'd been arrested and put in court. But goodness. In a dark way, it's kind of in keeping with our theme today, mental health.
Yeah, because what?
But you remember the Jim Jones incident?
Yeah.
Back, this was almost a identical situation, except that the strangeness and the twistedness of how people actually believe this guy.
Yeah.
And one report on the BBC this morning said that as the police and authorities moved in, there were some people who did not want to be rescued.
Wow.
They wanted to starve to death so that they could see Jesus.
Yeah.
They were still bent on the mission. Yeah.
And that just speaks to how influential spiritual leaders are. And it's easy for folks to literally believe everything you say. So you got to be careful not to practice spiritual malpractice, right?
That's right.
Because, listen, we have to steward our influence as pastors. And so, I believe that's why conferences have in place these conflict of interest policies, because it kind of prevents us from using our influence for other reasons that could benefit either ourselves or other situations. And so if your pastor is telling you to sign up for this investment account or to do this or do that, and you'll be blessed, please do your research. Don't just listen to what they say. Do your research. And if the pastor's preaching the word, look at it for yourself. Don't just take what's coming out the pastor's mouth. Read for yourself.
Right.
Well, one mother was interviewed by the BBC, and she said that when this all started to occur, and especially when it affected her children, I'm paraphrasing now because she was speaking in her language. She said that when it occurred to her that one of her responsibilities was to let her children die, she said, "Oh no, there's something." No, there's something wrong with this. In fact, this pastor made it a sin to cook for your family. He called that a sin.
But he was eating all along.
And he was and in terms of the order of death, he said all of his congregants had to die first, starting with children, then adults, then he would be last. But then this one woman they interviewed and said, no, there's something wrong with this. His children was not
in that mix.
Oh, goodness.
So were they giving their possessions to him? Like, what was he getting out of it?
Oh, he was land. You know,
that's what I'm thinking.
You should read this. If you look it up on Google, the story is almost believable. You would think, how gullible can people be? But when you're in a culture or in a situation in a country where you're deprived, you don't have the things of Western, worlds have, but the people are suckered in because they're in need. They have, people like that do have some mental challenges, and they're looking for relief, looking for salvation, looking for happiness. And here comes this guy that says, oh, well, you can only be happy in Jesus, but to get there, you got to kill yourself.
And they're willing to do it.
And I want to say too, just to add on to you, Chuck, there is something about the mind, and I pray that Pastor Moses will bring this out, that we're so impressionable. And it's not just due to economic depression, but when you have cares of this world. I mean, like I said, I work a little part-time at a hospital for people who are on substance abuse and mental illness due to suicide attempts and things like that. And people are going through so much that when you give them any type of hope, even if the hope seems jacked up, it doesn't even make real sense. But if you keep telling them over and over and over, they'll start to believe it, because something has to be better than what they're going through right now. And so you got to stay balanced, and that's the sad part about Christianity. We make it so strange that, people who really need it in the world is not, I knew those Christians were strange. We, as was stated, we have to study and know that, that's not how God is going to come. And that's not what he wants us to do to ourselves and to anyone else. But the mind is something else. We must pray. We must, stay before God, because it's fragile. Mind is very fragile. And when you hear something over and over and over, we see it in the U.S. You hear a lie over and over and over, you believe the lie.
Well, it's interesting. Talking about believing the lie, one of the things that this guy preached against was education. He said education was of the devil.
Okay, so I'm going to bring in our special guest a little early, because
we start things off with such a lovely story, everybody. But I just thought
our special guest is actually from Kenya.
Yeah.
Pastor Moses Juguna. I'm going to bring him up here. And so I know you hear us talking about this.
This is crazy.
And so I know you were sharing some intel with us. Give us a little bit more background on the story that you know.
And just for our audience, okay, this was not practiced, okay? This is purely off the cuff, all right?
Chuck, I'm glad you started first, Chuck, because I was going to say something else, but this is an excellent segue as far as mental health is concerned.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So Moses, you were sharing with us a little bit more background than I think we knew in terms of some of his motives.
Yeah, it's actually disappointing that this is one of the ways my country, Kenya, is making news instead of the good things that we usually do. But this man has been operating for quite a long time, and the thing that he has done is to just zero in on the frustrations of the people, especially the people who graduate from school. They're looking for jobs, they cannot get jobs. Others have been known to quit jobs and sell everything and bring the money to him. He was in an 800-acre forest, a big land, where he hidden from everyone. He was able to do a lot of these things. As Chuck said, he's been arrested a couple of times and released every time. And so when there's a mixture of superstition and corruption and religion, that whole mix, whatever comes out of it, is just terrible, because we're talking over 200 people died so far.
That is.
He said so far.
Right.
Yeah. So
there's usually a business behind that. Dr. Moses. Can you share with us possibly what may have been the motive? We know money, but what business is behind that, you think?
There's a speculation that there was an organ trade business.
Gotcha.
And so one of the ways they're going to find out more about that is by doing autopsies. And should they find some bodies that are missing various organs, then
Wow.
of course, that'll be one of the ways to prove that this was happening.
Wow.
Right.
And then just follow the money, see whether there's a trail.
Well, that's probably one of the reasons he was targeting the kids first, because those organs are a little fresher and better condition. Wow.
And Pastor Moses, Tasha, I know you're about to go somewhere. Pastor Moses, you just said something we were speaking of that is not so much the uneducated, but here they were educated people. He taught against school because he don't want them to read, right, and be educated to get away from him. So he wants to, prevent them from knowledge. But what would make the educated, those who know better, follow a person like that?
Just like you said before, the mind is one of the greatest gifts that we have, but used wrongly, the mind is also very fragile and malleable. And so when you can have all the education, but when frustrations of life set in and stresses of life set in, it doesn't matter how much education you have. You need to have other things that are going to help fortify the mind against the deception and against all these other things that could be going on. And this man, I think, is very smart because his message is very appealing and high in the sky. Yeah.
Wow. Mercy.
Yeah, and he had a target audience.
Yeah.
Just by listening to both of you, just GP and Moses, what you just said together, his message is appealing, right, and having a target audience. I don't know, producer, if we could segue right into where we are. We've asked Pastor Moses, we call him Pastor Moses, to hang with us for a little bit here. He is one of our front runners in Allegheny East when it comes to mental health, when it comes to I don't know, GP is always great at at coining phrases for us, and I think this one is y'all gonna make me lose my mind. And can I add up in here? Up in chair. Moses, we're happy that you're on board with us. And a lot of us pastors have moved towards mental health as far as ministry is concerned, and an accepted tool. We've also felt that without it, GP used the word spiritual malpractice. Sometimes I look back now over the years in ministry, and some of the things that I have said, especially in grief moments, had I added more anxiety onto families or church members. But we want to pinpoint to begin with our pastors, and we know that mental health is crucial for everyone. And it's those of us.
I'm sorry not to interrupt you, but I do want to qualify something else regarding Pastor Moses, and that although he serves us as a pastor, he also is skilled and as a psychiatric nurse. Is that the?
It is, but Latasha, I was just getting ready to big him up, but go ahead, since you.
I want to know that
no,
coming
right.
from a pastoral perspective here. He's coming.
You're right. You're right, and why I wanted to share that, and you're right. The reason why I wanted to show that part is because many of us went ahead and did our masters and said, okay, it helps along with what we're doing. Few of us have gone on to doctorates to be able to. There's so much more that can be done. So yes, you're right. Before I hit that piece, Moses, please, and I know that you are a humble guy. Latasha said psychiatric. Help us with that really quick before we ask you to pour out into us.
Yeah, thank you. As a psychiatric nurse practitioner, you are trained to serve populations across the lifespan. And so you do assessments, evaluations. So let's say there's a person who just walks into the clinic. You're doing the assessment, you're doing the evaluation, and then you do a diagnosis. You can also do studies. You need to do studies, lab studies, that's blood work and all that. And then you prescribe medication. And then you also follow through. The follow through part is very important. So basically, when you're working in that role, you're able to hopefully help the patient or the person, especially in the mental illness. Now, there's a difference between the psychiatric nurse practitioner and the therapist.
Right.
The therapist spends more time doing therapy, CBT, and things of that nature. But what has been found and what is actually being practiced, best practice, is to combine both what the therapist is doing and the psychiatric nurse practitioner is doing, in that the medication and the therapy both working together for best outcomes.
In other words, what Marlene, what he's really trying to tell us is that you guys do therapy. Look at this smile. No, but we also have to understand that, and we got to get this out of the church, everybody. We have been taught, or there's a teaching that if you take meds, that you should not take medication. Moses, I know I'm all over the place, but can talk to us about those who
going there too. Good job.
Have prescribed, where doctors have prescribed medication for mental or otherwise, and we decide we don't want to do it because I don't know, we're against it.
God,
we don't need it.
He's the mind regulator, right? Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And I think even before we get to them, we need to just kind of see what kind of environment we've created to even allow that kind of thinking in our preaching and our teaching, where we just say everybody got to be strong, and you'll be strong. We even sing a hymn. One of the beloved songs is "What a Friend We Have in Jesus," which has a line that says, "We should never be discouraged." That is not true,
Yeah, right.
So when we put these kinds of messages, and then we find a person and so in this context of stigma,
yes,
anything mental health, whether it's therapy, whether it's medication, whether it's even just saying I'm struggling here, is looked down upon. And so the approach will start with just destigmatization, where we just remove the stigma first, and then we make it okay. It's actually okay to delve into mental health.
Moses, I began maybe about 4 years ago, a little bit before the pandemic. I had come out and regarding depression and anxiety. You would be surprised, gang, of the amount of emails that I've received and text messages I've received. The negative, not the positive side, negative side of how can you be a pastor, or how can you be man of God and be depressed and go through anxiety. Yes, let me just go both ways. I had people who said, "Man, me too." Pastors who have said, "Wow, me too," but are too afraid to say something about it. But there was also a group that said something opposite of that. Moses, help us pastors. Can we go straight to pastors, gang, for a second? Help us. Pastors deal with self-care, emotional resilience, being role models, etc., etc. You heard all. What are some of the things that we ought to be able to recognize that our minds are not as stable as it should be as pastors?
Yeah,
some signs.
One of the things is just to realize, like the statistics have shown, World Health Organization, that over 264 million people suffer from depression. Let me just start with depression all around the world. What are the chances that of those 264 million people, pastors are also part of the 264 million?
Right.
Chances are very high. It's a reasonable assumption that they're also involved in that. And then when you look at the role of the pastor, it's very emotionally draining. First of all, the expectations. Expectations are super high. Members expect of us things that they do not expect of themselves. And, for some good reason, but we also expect of ourselves things that we do not expect of others. We sometimes tend to be our worst critics. And I know everyone knows that. You preach a sermon, you don't even want to watch it.
Right.
And you're ruminating, I should have said this, I should have said this. What kind of, and so you're in that space, you're ruminating. And when you're ruminating, rarely do you think of the positive things. You're always thinking of the negative things.
Side.
And the mind is actually, geared towards negativity, if you didn't know. Rarely will the mind just, if left to itself, the mind leans towards the negative side. And so it's an intentional effort that we have to do to be optimistic, to just pull the mind towards the positive of life. And so when you talk about the expectations, then when you talk about our role, talking with people, walking with people through their journeys, the grief, all of that, you end up becoming like the medieval sin eater. You're taking all these things in, taking everything in. If you don't have an outlet, of course, it will mess you up. I think it was Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher, who said that be careful when you stare into the abyss, because the abyss is also staring right back at you. Or, for the pastors, we're always staring at the abyss. And for the therapists, all these people who are in the caring professions. And so chances are very, very, very high that pastors are going to deal with mental health issues, depression, anxiety being one of those, and even, just sense of loss and self-worth diminishing, and so many examples in scripture. So yeah, that is there. And I think it's okay for pastors to know that our profession is tailor fit to deal with mental health struggles as pastors. Yeah.
Can I ask this question, Pat?
Come on, go ahead.
So, Pastor Moses, can one have mental illness and not know it?
It depends. It depends. There are the mood disorders, something like depression and anxiety, and even what we could call bipolar. You might have that, and if you're not exposed to, if you're not aware, you might not know what's going on. You just feel, I don't have energy. I don't feel like going to church, which is not enough.
Well,
Nobody call me. And so, you're not eating well. And so you may not know if you're not exposed to it. However, other mental illnesses, something like schizophrenia, at that point you might not know, but everybody will know because your mind has gone to another place. Other things like depression, other things like addictions, of course you will know because you're actively. And so it really depends on, which kind of illness that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I was speaking of depression, like what Pat was saying, how so many people were shocked about him, and they could be others as well themselves who might suffer from depression from time to time and not realize that it's depression.
Yes. Oh yes. And I think one of the good things is, like now we have the podcast here and other resources that have been made available to pastors to just kind of know. Of course, you should never self-diagnose, but also being self-aware. I'm not optimal right now. I don't, think things are going the way I want them to go, and then you reach out to someone, and they kind of help you along the journey, and then things get better. Eventually, they do.
Okay, Moses, you say I'm not operating at my optimal performance. I feel like from what I've heard from pastors that it's sometimes hard to say that. to someone, or who do you say it to where they won't say, oh, they can't handle it, they can't stand the heat, didn't they know this is what ministry was about? There's that judgment that comes when people say they need help or this is too much. How can we navigate that? How do pastors navigate that? Like, who do they go to say this is too much?
Your ministerial director.
Yeah, one of the good things that I got from the recent employees meeting was the push or the encouragement to have 3 people in your life, to have a mentor who will tell you, this is what you need to do. Then to have a life coach who will tell you this is how you need to do it. And then an accountability partner to keep you on track. And I think what that does, it also helps you to start creating community, because every study has shown that any improvement in mental health is done in the context of community.
Yes.
Wow, that is so good.
Whether it be addiction, whether it be whatever change, positive change, is done in the context of community. And that's why even spiritual growth, the small groups, they were designed for that. That's the same principle.
Yes.
And when you look at our role is designed for us to be lonely and alone. Just carry my burdens alone, and it mitigates against that. And so we have to be intentional. Maybe I could reach out to GP. He's my accountability partner. He may not know. He may not be well versed in mental health, but he'll push me. Hey, you need to go see someone.
Yeah.
I need you to make this phone call, and I'll check on you tomorrow to make sure that you made this phone call. That is a step in the right direction.
Can you please repeat those 3 people you need in your corner again, just one more time?
Yes, a mentor, to tell you what you need, then a life coach to show you how to do it, and an accountability partner to make sure that you're doing it. And it's best if, the more people they are, the better. Sometimes we just have a mentor and that's it. But on top of the mentor, we need somebody else. And then, we need the life coach, then the accountability person. And what you're doing, you actually created, now you have 3 people, definitely 3 people who are there. And that's going to be helpful in creating community.
So one of those people, sometimes people try to lean on their spouse to be one of those 3. Do you recommend that being someone other than your spouse?
I think it would be unfair to your spouse to carry all this burden. Ministry spouses are already struggling, in their own way as part of the pastor's family.
Right.
And so when you are that burden, it's a little unfair. However, they need to know, this is what's going on. I mean, your spouse needs to know this is your mentor, this is your life coach, this is your accountability partner.
Right.
Yeah, but they don't need to be doing that for you, because they're also struggling. Yeah.
Which is go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marlena, please.
If I could just say this, because so many people tend to isolate themselves when they're going through this. Can you help them with the importance of choosing these 3? Because some people say, I don't have anybody in my life. I don't know anybody, because of that negativity that you were speaking of. They deny that there are positive people who are around them all the time, but they isolate themselves thinking there is no one. And so when you say, I don't have a mentor, I don't have anybody that could be my life coach, I don't have anybody that can hold me accountable. Can you speak to that and let them know the importance and urgency?
Yes, and it's true that we've really not done a good job, in creating positive environment and safe spaces. And people don't even want to talk during prayer meeting, because the moment I share my struggle, that will be that's like sharing a status update somewhere. And so what I encourage is what has worked for me is to pray that God will lead me towards these people, and you know, when that happens, and you just ask God to help you be aware, you know, sensitive when He's leading towards, you know, you towards that. And so, apart from that, I think being intentional about looking for someone you see who can help you, and you can say, "This is a good person. They're probably not ready to be my mentor right now, but they're a good friend who can be, you know, can help me, you know, stay accountable. This is a person who is a life coach, and this person can help me." Sometimes it comes with a cost, and it's okay. You know, I'd rather pay something now than, you know, having to down the road, you know, make major payments because of my health struggles.
Mm.
I don't know whether that answers your question, but it's a very personal, you know, private thing that, you know, each person has a different style. But as long as you're looking for those people, you'll find them.
All right,
Yeah.
GP.
So
Yeah.
I was thinking about the book entitled The Body Keeps Score. So how does mental health affect your physical health, and what illnesses can come from mental illness in the rest of your body?
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's transferring, or how does it affect the rest of your body?
Yes.
So good.
You know, there's a verse that we usually read when we are dedicating children. Luke 2:52, and Jesus increased in, you know, stature, in wisdom, in favor with God and with man. And that verse is powerful because it points to 4 areas that are interconnected: the physical, which is the body; the wisdom, which is the mental part; in favor with God, that's the spiritual part; and in favor with man, you know, the social part. And so all those are interconnected, and there are other areas that.
Hold on, guys, 1 second. Let me steal that for the next sermon. Make sure I get that one.
So they're all interconnected. You know,
Beautiful.
if you're not sleeping for whatever reason, you know, it's going to affect your mood the next day. You know, you'll be cranky, the energy levels are low. It's going to affect your relationships. If you're sleeping late, you can forget having the morning worship. It's gone. You know, and so it's a small thing like that just messes the entire system. And so, of course, mental health has been known to negatively affect even, you know, blood pressure, you know, hypertension, cardiac illness. There is depression-induced cardiac disorders, you know, just due to depression. Of course, you know, anxiety affects everything. You know, your breathing, you can barely speak. You know, it's all interconnected. And so, as a church, we do a very good job of health ministries, which focuses on the physical.
Right.
Yeah.
And for mental, we usually have just the last one: trust in God. You
Yeah.
know, trust in God.
Yeah.
You know, and there's more to it that we can do.
Go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead.
You're
Go ahead.
muted.
You're muted.
Would be helpful to turn the mic on.
Just on.
There's been a trend of functional medicine that has found themselves, as I've been following this the last few years, there are some doctors and clinics that are moving towards functional medicine. And in the process of doing that, they're finding that metabolic health is having a direct effect on mental health. Let me give you one example. A functional physician had a patient brought to him, a young lady. She was very hard to deal with from a behavioral point of view. And the mother was just ready to give up. She had taken the child to various you know, psychotherapists and, you know, school counselors and so forth. So they came to this functional clinic. And before, you know, the physician started to diagnose or come up with a solution, they would ask to do an assessment, as you mentioned earlier in your opening. And the surprising thing that they found was that she was not crazy. She was not mentally ill. She was malnourished.
Mm.
And as a result, he did not prescribe medicine. He told the mother, he said, here is her diet. After he did a full assessment, they found that she was taking in an excessive amount of sugar,
Fruit Loops,
excessive amount of processed foods. So he gave her a diet for her that included what they consider real food, no process, completely take her off of sugar and processed foods. In 6 months, she made a 180.
Wow.
Wow.
I can see that.
Wow.
So that
That's
was
that
a
connection.
direct correlation to diet. And then I want to ask about lifestyle. I think lifestyle and environment has a lot to do with a person's mental state. I was just reading a few articles the other day about left brain, right brain. And Moses, can you talk about that a little bit there? How the brain functions and that there's certain activities that the right brain does that the left brain doesn't, and vice versa? Is there any
Yeah, there's actually the thing about that. Well, I may not go into so much details about it. Is the connection between the left brain and the right brain. The thing that connects them is known as the corpus callosum. That connects, both of this. Now, at an early age, from the age of 3 or so, for young girls, when estrogen starts to be formed in the body, it helps the corpus callosum become thick. And so there's so many connections. And this is what enables the women to multitask and to do a lot of things, because the communication between the two sides
Okay, easy, Moses. Stay on our side. Stay on our side.
is efficient.
Facts.
And this thing that we call the sixth sense is actually because of the connection between the two. And you'll find a woman, a mother, and of course, and that's why Mother's Day is a big deal, man.
Yeah.
You'll find a mother, she's on the phone, she's cooking, and she's breastfeeding, and everything is fine, everything goes on well. For the man, you just get a text message. First of all, you want to sit down,
Concentrate.
you want to reduce the TV volume to understand, and all of that. And I think that's part of so those differences that are there between men and women. It can be traced down to the left and the right brain. Yeah.
We talked about health ministries in our churches. Do you think that it would be much more effective if our health ministries would provide whole health ministries?
Definitely.
So we talk about, of course, there's been a lot of talk about, metabolic syndrome and metabolic health. And it has been proven through trials that there's a relationship between that and your mental health. I just find it ironic that sometimes we present our health ministries, in my opinion, in a counterproductive way. We'll have mental health day at the church and then load everybody up at potluck with some of the worst foods you'd want to consume. And I would think that we would offer some sense of consistency we talk about mental health, and it's a very important subject, but how lifestyle and diet has a tremendous effect on how we think and how we behave.
And even when we talk about it, the way we talk about it is very key, because sometimes we, for whatever reason, and I think it's more because of us, the pastors, when our messages are not grace oriented or grace filled, and we pass down that message to the members, that when we don't communicate with grace, then we are doing real talk. And so you find that even the health ministry, sometimes the communication or the teachings about health ministry sometimes can be very judgmental, very critical. You all need to stop feeding your children this, you all need to do this, you all need to stop that. And there's so many factors that go into it. Anyone who has ever tried to be a vegan or vegetarian, you will know that's the most expensive lifestyle. It's actually much cheaper to not be vegan or vegetarian. I mean, I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just saying economic wise.
Right.
And so when you have members who are struggling economically, their income is not that high. And, all of a sudden they're being told now you have to go shop at Whole Foods and things of that nature. It's actually very discouraging. And so again, it all goes to, being grace-filled, grace-oriented, and just providing hope, and also communicating in such a way that people will know this is possible, and it has an effect down the road.
Yeah. I think what you were saying, Charles, is key in having that whole health balance, because I think sometimes in our churches we operate on extremes. So we have those who, the health message, we see that as one of the hallmarks of Adventism. That's our key, and we go so far into health, the physical part, the eating, that we neglect the mental, we neglect the other aspects. And it's like, no, if you eat right and exercise, all that stuff will regulate itself. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. So it's like we have to help our churches, help people create that balance. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think there's a connection. We need to emphasize that there's a connection. You could have someone that's physically able and mentally a wreck.
Right.
So I think it needs to be done in a holistic manner and with balance.
Right.
Moses, what do you say to the person who says, well, I don't know, psychiatric work and psychotherapy, isn't that counter to just trusting God and praying about your mental state? What is it that a psychotherapist, now this is, I'm just voicing someone else's, it's not my belief. What is it about a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or a mental health professional? What is it that they have over the Holy Spirit?
Right. Well, nothing, because the Holy Spirit leads us into all truth. And what people need to understand is that trusting in Jesus and talking to a therapist are not mutually exclusive.
Amen.
It is not either or. You can do both. God has been known to use donkeys to speak his messages.
Well,
and so, the Holy Spirit can use anyone. And so, in much the same way that we do not discourage people to go for their annual physical, and we actually encourage at a certain age, man, make sure you're getting this done, you're getting that done. Seeing a therapist should not be something that we should do only when there's a crisis. It helps us, be aware of ourselves, especially that part of being self-aware. It helps us understand our trauma, and our trauma responses, things that trigger you, things that trigger us. It actually makes you a better person. I've had many people who went through CPE, just the first unit, just coming in of it saying, I now understand things much better. And they become less judgmental and less critical just because of that one unit, which I think every pastor should do. Actually helps us to, understand things much better. And so just helping the members know that it's okay to get therapy, and therapy is good, by a trained professional. It will help prevent a lot of problems that we see down the road.
Does it matter if that person is a Christian or not?
What matters is the modality that they are using. Right now, top of the world, CBT that's cognitive behavior therapy. Top of the line, DBT, dialectical behavior for personality disorder. Others for trauma. Now, when you start going into things like hypnosis and psychic and palm readings, very thin line. At that point, you're really not doing therapy. You put that in another realm. And so CBT can be offered by anyone. With that being said, if you can get a Christian who is doing it and they're not just doing what has been known as Christian counseling, which is just another form of preaching, basically, you know. You know, and this is where we come in as pastors, you know, just being able to vet the kinds of people we are referring our members to. Just like we don't let anyone come to the pulpit. We should be able to have a list, you know, these are the people that, you know, like you to go and see. And I think our relationship department has done a very good job to provide us with a catalog of therapists in each area where we can say, hey, this is a good person, just go see that person, and be helpful.
You know, I know we have a few more minutes left. I want to say something practical, Moses, that you got to help us on. So one day, I think it was a Wednesday night prayer meeting, I got up. I'm making a segue into mental health, and I asked I called their names, asked them to stand up to read the verse, not recognizing that person could not read. Did not know that the person could not read. That hurt me. I'm glad it was a small group at Wednesday night prayer meeting, but I learned then, after being there for a number of years, didn't know that this person could not read. But I also, the high anxiety that I caused that person that day could have been in a worse situation. There are a lot of things that we do at church right now that causes anxiety on our members, that we cause anxiety in our members. I've heard some of your webinars concerning it. That blew my mind. After about 20 years in pastoral ministry, I'm like, are you kidding me? One of those, and you could take it from here, one of those even being asking visitors to stand.
Yeah.
Moses, please help me, man, because if that's not a part of you see, I need that in my anxiety to lower my anxiety so everybody could know that I got visitors coming to my church.
Right.
Now I'm taking that out. I'm going to blow that. Anyway, just go ahead, Moses. Anxiety. Go ahead.
Yeah. One of the, a lot of people suffer from social anxiety disorder. And just even athletes, you know, have say that, you know, they have this. I forget the name top of my mind, but he used to do his press conferences wearing his helmet on because he could not face the media. And I think it was a first or second round draft, you know, first pick or second pick NFL draft. It was a running back from Miami. I forget his name. You know, so this is something a lot of people deal with, they struggle with. And that's why you don't get a lot of volunteers to come and lead out whatever thing that you want them to do, you know, in front of the church. Now, I'm not saying we should not be welcoming visitors. Sometimes, you know, we need to be more informed. Sometimes I say we welcome visitors, everybody stand up, tell us where you're from. And the worst thing that they want to do is to speak in front of people. You know, studies have shown that the number one fear in the world is the fear of, you know, public speaking. And then the number two fear is the fear of death. And then someone added that the number three fear is the fear of dying while speaking in public.
Wow.
I don't know how true that is, but you know, we ought to be careful how we handle some of those things.
Yeah, I agree. Now,
Go ahead.
No, I was talking about, since we're talking about the church context and building anxiety, you know, things that we do unconsciously that build anxiety. I kind of want to go back to how members add to the anxiety of the pastor, maybe unknowingly, because, you know, I want to educate myself, you know, as a parishioner, wanting to be sensitive to all that pastors have coming at them. So I'm asking our pastors and you two, everybody on the panel, what can members do to help alleviate some of the anxiety that we may not even realize we're causing for you? Anyone? Are you guys? No, all of you. Because sometimes people don't realize that, you know, running up to you at church right before you're going on a pulpit is anxiety building, or you know what I mean? Like they're just thinking, oh, let me grab the pastor while I see them, like
the biggest thing for me is accessibility. They don't have a problem with calling you at any time of the day or night, and their expectation is that you're going to answer. Yet if you set up office hours, nobody calls you during your office hours, and nobody comes to you during your office hours. But it's that time when you need to kick back, when you need to relax. I remember taking Mondays as an off day, and members of the church complained about an off day, and still will call you. I think it's the expectation of the accessibility. I would recommend set your boundaries as far as is concerned. I would recommend that, but it's my problem because then, okay, Moses, you ready for this? Because if I set up boundaries for, as far as all this concern, and then now I feel guilty for setting up boundaries.
Yes.
Right. And so I'm going in a tailspin now. Right. So I'm going to pick up the phone for this one person. That one person says, I talked to the pastor. So then now they're calling me on the same time. Then you're spiraling all the way down. You say, I'm doing the work for Jesus. I'm doing the work for Jesus, until you get to the place where your body tells you you're on shutdown mode. Yeah. And nobody really understands that. That's why accessibility is the one for me.
Grace, like if I don't answer the phone, doesn't mean that I've forsaken you as a member. It just may mean that I'm busy right now. Or
I want to add this for GP, which I still live with a level of guilt. That there are times where I have put my church in front of my family, especially my children, and that was totally unfair for them. I have prayed recently, gang, for God to give me back what the locusts have eaten. That is my number one prayer, that God gives me back what has eaten. And so that's what GP, be very careful about that. They don't think about your family right away. They think about where you are. And that's what I want to add my part.
And I'd like to add this too, because Tasha made a very good point. I'd like my church members to protect my ministry time, because there are times people rush up on Sabbath morning. They want to talk to you, and they talk to you about stuff that don't even make sense. And they're angry and they're bitter about something that don't even make sense. And you're trying to keep your mind, on the sermon you're preaching, because you're about to speak, before the Lord, for the people. And they're coming with stuff that just don't even make sense. And even if it does, we can just wait until afterwards, and even understand our preparation time. Like sometimes I get a lot of calls on Fridays. I'm like, I don't want to answer that phone because, like me, Fridays I turn television off. It's just me and God talking, fellowshipping all day. And people say, Pastor, I called you yesterday, you didn't pick up the phone, right?
Like, I
They
know.
don't understand. So I think that's important, that they understand that we need time with ourselves and with God, and that's got to be all right with you, and I do make myself available for many of my church family. And like you, Pat, my people grab me every Sabbath. I don't get down to eat, my meal until maybe an hour later, and everybody say, Pastor, you got to eat. But people act like that's the only time, they can see me. But I just want them to protect my time, or at least understand it when I share that, I got to have a little time. I'm going to get with you. Just give me time.
That's fair.
I'll just like to add that, once the members know that pastors are under tremendous strain and stress, and some of it is self-inflicted. I think it's part of our makeup. I don't know. A man like Elijah, at the apex of his ministry success, just being able to call fire from heaven after these guys have, not been able to do it for a whole day, and then being able to pray for rain, and rain comes after 3 years. I mean, that Elijah could have gone and started a ministry called Calling Fire from Heaven Ministry International Incorporated or something like that. I mean, he was at the top. But
Yeah.
then, the following day, he's under the tree saying to God, it's enough. Kill me. I'm not better than my ancestors, my forefathers. And you're like, where is this coming from? Who told him? Who is comparing him with his forefathers? But that is inbuilt, because sometimes, even for ministry, the markers of success are out of our hands.
Yes.
How
Yes.
many people you baptize, how much the church returns tithe. And unfortunately, that's all the markers we know. Well, we forget other markers that, how many people are spirit filled and they're changing. It's out of our hands completely. And so just a word of encouragement goes a long way, for pastors and their families.
Wow, that's amazing. Listen,
Yeah.
I got to tell you, Moses, I always knew you, but didn't know until I got into this mental health thing. And I want to say this publicly to everyone, even my gang. I believe that that's the next step that God has called me to, the next chapter that God has called me to. I look up to you, Pastor Moses. I every time I see that you're on a podcast or doing something, I always want to know, what is this guy going to say next, or what's coming up next? So I want to thank you for hanging out with us. I think that if we could do part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and still not get to, let this mind be in you. We still can't get there. But I want to thank you for stopping by and hanging out with us. And be prepared. Anything could happen with the podcast, that we could call you back again, because so many things. I want to let everyone understand is when we come up in the beginning and we start talking about what has gone on during this week, we're not just saying that. These are things that have touched us, things that have hurt us, things that have, and we have to go through that. So it kind of helps us in the beginning. I want to even thank you for being here in the background while we were even discussing this, because it was a perfect segue that even when we get off this line, man, there's so much more to learn. So I want to thank you for hanging out with us. I know there's so much more that you could bring to the table. I know that there's going to be more time for that. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and before we go, we talked a little bit about the stressors for pastors, and someone touched on pastoral families. Before we go, I do want us to look at that a little bit more, Moses, about some of the stressors we don't realize the family is going to. We place a lot of attention on pastor, but they also have, as Pat was saying, things that the family experiences. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, and I know our time is running out, so I'll just touch on a few things. One of them, of course, will be the expectations that we have for pastors and especially their families. I grew up as a PK, a pastor's kid, and so we dealt with everything. And sometimes you find people being very critical, being very judgmental, and maybe they don't even know that they're doing that. Of course, the loneliness and not being able to fit in. But one of the things that I found as I was researching and getting ready for this is a study that came out from the Methodist denomination. And they pointed out that one of the major stresses for the pastor family is relocations. And according to that study, the relocations are like every 3 to 4 years, and they cause tremendous strain on, of course, the pastor. Now they come in the new community, new church, new everything. The spouse is having to look for employment elsewhere, and the kids, having to go to school. And that resonated with me very much, because, we moved a lot growing up. Between the age of 4 and the age of 15, around 10 years or so, I had gone to 6, 7 different schools. And so once you bring in the attachment theory and what the attachment theory does say about such things,
you're pretty good, Moses. You're pretty good.
you end up having, and then of course at the end of it all, we start saying, pastors' kids are messed up. They're the
Yes.
worst.
Mm.
But we forget that we actually did this to them. And
Mercy.
so,
Wow.
yeah.
Man, that's another show, man. That's another show right there.
Yeah, because like how can we? Yeah, because I'm thinking about the attachment, even the pastor's spouse and the friendships they develop with people, and then they have to go and try to find another friend group, and it's just a lot.
And their careers. I mean, many of them are very successful and they have great jobs, and then you pull them out of their jobs and they have to go relocate somewhere, and you lose, retirement benefits.
Or Marlena, what about when your wife does not keep the persona of first lady, or doesn't want that position as first lady, or, and I'm using that term first lady, it can cause turbulence also.
Wow. Yeah, so many moving parts during a transition, and then you're getting settled in your new assignment, and members are, what's your plan, and you're trying to get your house situated in order. It's just brutal. Brutal times.
And it happens so fast.
Kind to pastors and their families during transition, and be gracious.
It's true.
Yeah, that's
and Moses, I can add, now you got me asking, there's so many things that, even churches have changed post-pandemic. Anxiety has gone up because of the pandemic, and we're still not over 2001. What has happened in 2000, September 11th? We're right on the back of each war. We're right on the back of each one, and now we're here at post-pandemic, and we're saying churches are not even the same anymore. Churches are not expected to be the same anymore. Does that mean pastors are not expected to be the same anymore? Youth and children are definitely not the same anymore. School children, not the same anymore. So, I mean, there's so much that's going on around us. There's so much happening.
So it's forcing our churches to change what we do and how we do it.
Yeah. GP, can I put Moses back on the spot again at those three things that you need?
3 people.
Those 3 people that you need. Moses, I know you said it, and you sound like a broken record, but I think it's something that it'd be good for us to land our plane with.
Yes, we need a mentor to tell you what is needed in your life, because they'll speak the truth. They'll see your blind spots and tell you, this is what you can do to move forward, to improve, that kind of thing. Then the life coach will show you how this is done. This is actually how you need to do it. But knowing what you need to do and how to do it is not enough. You need someone to actually keep you accountable. And I'm currently going through a book on accountability. And man, if you want to live a dangerous life, live a life without accountability. And so the accountability partner helps you to move things along. And I think, that's very, very, very key. Just to add on to that, any pastor want to preach on that, the 4 guys who brought the paralytic to Jesus, I think they were part of his crew, because they came, I don't see anywhere where they asked for permission to, tear the roof down. Because maybe they were saying, we'll fix this later. This guy needs help.
Right.
And so at some point, you need to have those 4 people, like the 4 people who brought that guy. But in our case, it's 3 people: the mentor, the life coach, and the accountability partner.
I love that. And another thing too, as we're closing, I want to highlight about mental health. A lot of times we think about it after the fact, like when something goes wrong or have a breakdown. Now I need to go see a therapist. Or I think we need to understand that there's preventative things. Even seeing a therapist, you can see a therapist before there's a problem. I mean, don't have to wait until something catastrophic happens in your life to seek help or to help you process changes, process what you're thinking. And I have to say personally, before I saw a therapist, I had these preconceived notions about, laying on some couch and somebody in the corner, just, tell me more, and writing in a notepad. You had those constructs in your head, and it's not like that. I mean, therapy to me is something that helps you understand yourself better, helps you understand where your thought process is. And then, with those other 3 people that you're talking about, you can see how your life can become a little bit more fulfilling because you're more self-aware. I think a lot of us walk around without self-awareness. So I just wanted to throw that out there, people. We don't have to wait until there's something going on wrong. You just maybe want to process some thoughts or be more aware of who you are. Therapy is there for that as well. So I just wanted to throw that out there. All right, guys.
Well, what's good? We do have something coming up in our conference.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we've this month in Allegheny East, we for our pastors, because we recognize this is something that we want to highlight and have as a resource. Earlier this month, we had, and Pastor Moses was part of this series, Helping Members Through Crisis Mental Health Awareness Month. And Moses was one of the presenters, as well as Armina Deming on May 9th. But they also have one coming up this Tuesday. So all of our pastors who are watching, check out a ministerial page of our website to sign up for that. But, they'll be talking about marriage and family therapy. I'm sorry, not marriage. I'm reading we're talking about trauma, suicide, anxiety, depression, issues in the family, all the things that we kind of mentioned. So if there's some pastors out there who are watching, make sure you're taking advantage of that resource that our conference is providing. I think you'll benefit from that.
And they are recorded, correct, Tosh? So
yes, they are recorded and placed on our website, our ministerial page. Visit aec.org/ministerial if you want to just go right there if you missed that one or you won't be able to attend on Tuesday. All right. Well, I'm going to echo what Pat said in terms of thank you so much, Moses, for joining us and everything that you shared.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. I think you gave us a lot to think about. I hope that we'll all marinate on what we've heard, and not just marinate, but actually, make some adjustments if necessary.
Yeah, I think Moses deserves a 6% raise this summer.
Yep, naming and claiming. I'm sure that's
it's coming. It's coming.
But no, and we thank all of you for watching. Of course, you could probably tell we're not live, but we do enjoy reading your comments. So we hope that you will share some of your thoughts. We look forward to reading them. And of course, we will be back this week, 6:00 on Sunday, because if it's Sunday, guys,
it's the UpSet
podcast.
All right.
Bye, Tally.
Not here to ruin it. All right, everyone. Have a great week and stay well, especially mentally.
Yep.
All right.
Bye, guys. Blessed week.
Thank you.